Yo, what's up, everybody? And welcome once again to the UnLearnT podcast. I am your host, Ruth Abigail, aka RA.
What's up, friends? It's your girl, Jaquita.
And this is the podcast that is helping you gain the courage to change your mind so that you can experience more freedom. And we have a special guest in the building, me and Jaquita's very close best friend, Janae Chandler in the building. Everybody. Woo. Janae.
Listen,
Look.
Nay is what I call
Yeah,
it.
we'll basically be referring to her as Nay from here on out, just so you know. But yeah, we have known each other. We've all known each other for about 20 years. We were talking about that before we got on. We don't like saying it more than once, so that'll be it.
We're old.
Yep.
No more.
That's it.
No more.
Mm-hmm.
But this amazing woman has written a book. And it is called Life After Loss. And as you know, that we are in our series talking about the kitchen table and the things that we've had to unlearn from our kitchen table, which means things that we had to unlearn from growing up around our family, community, or society. And so we actually are going to talk about something that is tough, right? That's hard for a lot of people. We want to talk about what we've unlearned from our kitchen table around grief, loss, and death. And so Janae, welcome to the podcast, and we're so happy to see you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm a huge fan of the UnLearnT podcast. So it's such an honor.
Have a choice.
No,
it's such an honor to be on here with my sisters.
Yeah, man. We really are family, y'all. It's crazy. We're family for real.
We really are.
Like for real.
If y'all would remember, I think I spoke on a previous podcast about the wonderful friend who let me sleep on her couch for a year.
Oh, that's good to know.
Listen, sir.
That's so good. Oh,
listen, I'm gonna make her look real good. Okay, I owe her a year of my life because she provided for me in the time of need.
Come on.
So forever grateful to Janae.
It was a mutual beneficial arrangement.
Yeah, I told him how I was cooking.
She prepared me for marriage. It was all good.
I really did.
Oh, that's amazing. I love it. Janae, why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about who you are and what brought you to writing this book? Why'd you write the book?
Yes, so I am Janae Chandler, author of Life After Loss, 30 Days of Hope for Moms Grieving After Miscarriage. And I am a mom. I have 3 earthly kids, 1 heavenly child named Journey that I had between my second and my third earthly kids. I live in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm married to Emmanuel Chandler.
What's up, E?
He's amazing. I love him so much. And what prompted me to write the book was I was going through my own miscarriage journey, my own grief and healing journey, and there were not a lot of resources. There were not a ton that were biblically based and that really resonated with me. Definitely not a lot for Black women. And so on my drive, I think I was taking Isaiah to school, to daycare, and I just heard God say life after loss. And he started showing me different women in the Bible who experienced grief. We don't hear like a ton about women in the Bible all the time. They kind of play supporting actors, if you will, to main characters many times in the Bible. And so the Lord began just showing me different women in the Bible who experienced grief and loss. There's Hannah, who is one that's really known for infertility, and Mary, the mother of Jesus, who lost her son, and Rahab, who experienced loss. She was like shunned from society, and it goes on and on. And so I began to draw strength and healing from their stories, and I've captured those in Life After Loss along with my personal reflections to scriptures and prayers.
It's beautiful. That's awesome. So this is going to be more of a conversation. So just in case you were we're not going to interview really, Janae, like we're going to talk and like we're going to all kind of share some things we've had to unlearn around grief, loss, and death. And so so let's just, I would love to hear, from you, Janae, like, why don't you kick us off by what is something that you've unlearned as a result of going through that process? And yeah, and how has it become more free? Because I think the idea of life is, when I think about that, freedom is wrapped into that. Like, you
Yeah.
can be free after a loss that deeply. And so, like, what's something you've had to unlearn in order to become more free?
I think one of the things I've had to unlearn is not asking for help. So anytime you go through grief and loss, I think there's a tendency, I'll speak for myself, to kind of implode or kind of retreat. And naturally, I'm an introvert anyway. So to kind of retreat and to go to myself and process my feelings and emotions by myself. And I really had to unlearn that. I had a good friend of ours, her name is Erica, called me every day for like 2 weeks. And I was so annoyed initially by it, because I'm like, stop asking me to express
She's
my
gonna watch
feelings.
That's real. That's hilarious.
But she like purposed to call me like multiple times a day, at least once a day, and check in and be like, how are you feeling today? What are you thinking about? And I didn't like that exercise and process, but it really did help me to begin healing. I learned that I'm more of someone that has delayed grief, like where grief doesn't hit you right away.
Right.
So I, again, have the tendency to kind of bottle things up inside. And so having that person to like constantly check in and make me put emotions and feelings to what I was experiencing really was freedom for me. It helped me to kind of get things off my chest and to not carry that load by myself and grieve alone.
Ooh. Yeah, I think I'm a little like that. I don't like to express my feelings.
Surprise.
Yeah, I don't like it.
They're not my favorite thing to talk about.
It's tough. Like, I don't. I think, I kind of broke that barrier, at least in me and Ty's relationship, not too long ago, where he saw me cry for the first time, and we've been together for 4 years. And so, and he had never seen me like that, but I couldn't contain it anymore. Like, it was like, what was happening on me, I could not, and I just released it. And it was such a healing moment for us. And he was like, I appreciated this so much. Like, I feel like this was, I never want you to feel like you can't break in front of me. And I was like, I don't want to break in front of nobody. Like,
no, for real. Like, I shared a room with Ruth Abigail, and I think
for 4 years.
For 3. And I don't know that, I feel like I may have heard a sniffle once.
Maybe.
Like, I think she would intentionally wait for me to leave the room.
Oh, for sure. Like, there was no way. But like, but it was freeing, because then it was like, I needed to get to the breaking point in order to believe that somebody could handle my breaking point. Because I think that was part of the problem.
Yeah, I think we oftentimes need a safe place to land our emotions and our feelings and our grief too. Like, our grief has to have a safe place to land.
Yeah.
No, that's really good. I think for me, I always had, I felt like I had to unlearn the idea that grief was something that you just get over. That like, you might feel it, like they all say at the funeral, did you release? Like,
so
like,
true.
as if like, I'm going to release one time and then I'm going to be excellent from here on out because I released the grief. And I think that like, I had to unlearn the idea that grief is not something that you have to walk through and process through, and that there won't always be that sense of loss there. Like, you don't feel the loss with something else. Your life may get bigger around the loss, but it's still there. And so I think that I had to unlearn the idea that like, all right, I'm gonna feel this for a little bit, and then we're gonna be just fine. Right. And learning how to just really live with it and live in it. And I think grieving, the process of grieving is is really getting you to a place where you can be okay with the loss, because I don't think that I don't think we give people enough time to not be okay as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we oftentimes don't know what to do when they're not okay.
Or to say, yeah, I remember I had a friend who lost her father, and she's like a really good friend. She's like a sister to me. And I'll never forget the sound I heard, like when she told me. Like, it's so uncomfortable to be on the receiving end of that. Like, if you are the safe place where someone trusts you enough to share their grief or loss journey with you, it naturally, we as humans want to kind of rush it along, fill the space with sounds or words, or, be like, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And I just went to a funeral. A dear friend of mine, her mom passed away suddenly. And at the funeral, her cousins kept saying, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. You're going to be okay. She's like, no, I'm not. Stop saying that. And I think that we, like you were saying, Jaquita, want to rush grief. Grief is a journey.
Yeah.
It's cyclical. You never get over it. You accept it, but you never get over it. And so I think we have to normalize letting people be in their grief, like not making people think that grief has a time limit, because it doesn't. Like, Mary, the mother of Jesus, watched her son be crucified. And the first thing Jesus did when he was on the cross, was gave Mary a safe place to land her grief. She said, son, behold your mother, mother, behold your son. And she entrusted John to walk with her on her grief journey. And so we have to be okay, like you both are saying, not rushing people through their healing journey.
You don't know when it's going to hit. You don't know when your response is going to, it's not a controllable thing. And I like what you said, Jenna. It's cyclical, like it's seasonal, right? I have a team member who lost her mom to cancer. And she, there was a time not too long, like she was like, it's my mom's birthday. We're going to go to the graveside. I may or may not be there for staff meeting. I don't know how I'm going to be. Cool. No problem. Right. I totally understand that. That kind of, but understanding how to manage your movements with people in in those moments can be challenging, because you don't always know. You don't always know what to do. And I think that I think it's really important to allow people the space, like you said, I think one of you said, I can't remember who it was, but the space to do this in the timing that they need to do it. Right. Like, and not rush it or because ultimately we're uncomfortable with it. It's like, I don't know what to do with this. So I'm going to push my discomfort onto you,
and I don't like how it feels.
I don't like how it feels to me, and so it must not feel good to you, so let's both get out of this. Like, it's like no. Like, we have to allow other people to do what they do when they do it, and be there. It's like, that's really the most important thing, is just be there. Like,
just sit there. Like,
that's right.
Space and grace. Give people space and grace to process it how they need to, and to not try to fix it.
Not try to fix it.
Which is hard to do. When you said that it can come at any moment, that reminded me, I wrote about this in the book, but it was a few months after I had a DNC procedure, and the health systems support group called me for perinatal loss, to tell me that they had support groups if I needed one. I was on my way to a dentist appointment. And it's humorous how I write it, but it wasn't humorous at the time.
Right.
But they called me. I was turning the corner into the dentist office, and they were like, "This is Tri Health calling, from our support group for infant loss. If you're interested, how are you doing?" They asked me how I was doing. I was like, "I'm actually doing pretty well." So hung up the phone, go into the dentist. This is during COVID. So they are making me like rinse my mouth out with hydrogen peroxide. Probably like 15 minutes later after the call, 20 minutes later, I'm sitting in the dentist chair and the lady asked me to like swish my mouth out with peroxide so I don't give her COVID. And I do that. And then the tears just start coming like uncontrollably. She's like, I've never seen someone have this reaction to hydrogen peroxide. I was like, she's like, are you okay? I was like, no, I'm not okay. I just lost my baby. And she's like, I am so sorry. And so the thing about infant loss is like your hormones in your body still feels like you're pregnant. And so everything about that appointment was horrible. Like, because your gums are sensitive when you're pregnant, all that kind of stuff. But that one call kind of, in the moment I was okay, but like 20 minutes later I wasn't. And so grief happens that way too. Like you can totally not, someone may have asked you something a while ago and then it hits you like what they asked you later. And you're like, I literally, all I could do was let the tears fall. I literally couldn't stop them. And I think that's what we have to do to heal. We have to go through the process.
Yeah. You got to go through the process. And I think, like you said, let me say this. Let me ask this question. How old were y'all when you first went to your first funeral? I'm curious.
I think, I think about this a lot because I actually have a pretty young family. And so growing up, there weren't a lot of funerals. It wasn't until I hit maybe my late teens that like my great aunts and uncles started passing. And it was just kind of like it was a very strange phenomenon by then because they were happening so infrequently that like it really kind of shook us. I will tell you the first funeral that I really remembered and had like a lot of feelings about was my great aunt Ree. She was like big mama, everybody's big mama. Even she was my grandma because my grandma is the second youngest of 9 kids and my aunt Ree was the oldest. She was my grandma's big mama almost, like she was just everybody's person. And when she passed, I think that was the first time that like a funeral like broke me. Like, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm never gonna see her again. And I remember being deeply moved at that funeral, just hearing the stories people were telling about her and stuff I didn't know she was doing. And I also left that funeral with a charge. Like I was like, her life has to continue on through me in whatever ways like parts of her are in me. I have to make sure that I'm carrying her story forward. But that's the first one that really set with me. And I think I was in college when that happened. I think I was around 20.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think I was older too. Fortunately, I haven't had a ton of people in my family to pass away. And like I've lost grandparents. That's probably the closest. I've lost 3 grandparents. That's the closest that like has been super close to me. Yeah. And it's all been, I feel like, in my adult years. So I don't recall going to a ton of funerals when I was younger.
Yeah. That's what I find. I asked that because I find that, so we grew up in a church that was, everybody supported everything. Our church community was very tight.
And your dad was a pastor, so I'm sure you.
Yeah, well, yeah, but even before that, right? Like that, before he was a pastor, just he was a minister or whatever. But the church that I grew up in from like my childhood before my teenage years, it was a medium-sized church, 600, 700 people, members, whatever. But the pastor was a very strong leader, and where he went, the people followed. I say that to say, I started going to funerals probably before I was 10. But from people that I didn't even really know that well, because somebody passed, everybody went. It wasn't just a family.
Went to support.
You went. Like, and so we had some early deaths in my family. I had some cousins that had some physical disabilities that passed early on. And so those things happened. But I think one of the things I have had to unlearn is that because of my experience, a lot of people are not as comfortable with death as I feel like I grew up with. And it's like, just because it's like, and also I grew up in a church, and on top of my parents that are highly very theologically and doctrinally like sound. That was a core thing of us growing up. And so the idea of death, from the way that I interpreted it as a child, was it wasn't that grief wasn't important, but that grief
it was natural.
Well, it was natural, but it was more so like, but the word of God remains true. It was always that. It was always the word of God is above the grief. The word of God is trumps the grief, right? Death, we don't grieve as people who don't know what's true, right?
Like who have no hope.
Have no hope, right? Thank you, because my script it was a little off. But that was the way I thought about death, and it was just like, okay, we're gonna cry, kind of what you said. We're gonna cry, we're gonna release, we're gonna move on, because we know the truth, and this is just part of life, right? On one hand, I'm grateful for that. On the other hand, I realized that it stunted my I think emotional growth and health around loss, because I don't think I learned how to grieve properly, because we were very much a move forward kind of mentality, right? We're going to keep moving. And so so much like it was so ingrained in our conversations early on, like my early teenage years. My father, when he would go, he would travel a lot. When he would go, he would send, I remember it was before I left home, so it was pre-18, that he sent me the insurance information in case it was like, if something happens, this is what you got to do. This is before I graduated high school. He still sent a text with all the information, right? He has sent me, and I'm the oldest, so he does this to me the most. He sent me the way he wanted his funeral, right? The people he wanted to speak, the songs he wanted sung, the way he wanted all of it. I have it. I could tell you what it is, but I've been hearing it for years, right? And so it's like, it's just always been in front of me, right? And again, on some level, I'm grateful for that, because it is an emotional preparation for what is inevitable. But on the other hand, I never want to be callous to it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like I built up a little bit of a callousness. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But also I realized that, hey, that's not normal.
I wouldn't say that it is. I mean, you're prepared. We can call you. Be like, what are we supposed to do?
For real. Like, that's, I mean, but they did that. But I think it is also, I've also had to learn how to sit with people in a way that was honoring of what they needed to go through, even though it wasn't something that I fully understood.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's the positive of it for sure.
Yeah.
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 I think that, I don't know if this is cultural or if this is just like a lot of people's experience, but I think that I think that we are taught culturally, like sometimes as Black women especially, we are taught to just push through it. Like, you got other things to worry about, you got other things that need your immediate attention, and grief can sometimes feel like a luxury that we don't always have the time and the energy to really put into. I can sit here and grieve, and I think if you look at, there are examples of people that you may know who really got overtaken by their grief, and it stopped them. And it not only stopped them, it also stops the people that they're attached to. right? And I think that a lot of times we try to like not be though we try to not get stuck in those moments. But you do have to give yourself time to process. I also think, and I think that that's something that I learned by watching friends go through grief and grieving moments. I've had a few friends now that have lost parents, which was really, really, it was shocking to me even as a friend. But it immediately was like, okay, how are we going to surround this person or be there for that person in a way like I'm not going to be able to take the place of that person, but I, like Janae said, learning to be a safe place can be an exploration.
Yeah.
Right. And I think one thing that I have kind of like titled myself as like my friend's grief partner is that I'm going to be the person that they can have the honest conversation with. Like I'm going to ask the questions that like other people may not be asking because they're trying to tiptoe around things, but I feel like I have learned to have really good one-on-one conversations with people. Now the part that always gets me is that home visit. Like after someone has passed and everybody goes to the house, that's always the part that's like, all right, I bought some chicken.
Yeah, I
know. I'm not, I'm gonna sit there and I'm gonna try to find the moment and get in the rhythm, but those moments change a lot. But I think if you learn how to have those, like your friendship with that person has not changed. Like you can still be the same friend that you've already learned to be to that person. But a lot of times after a loss, people switch up, and they either become like hey, I got 5 scriptures for you right now. I got them locked and loaded. Okay. They took off that old man and put on that new one. Yeah. All right. They got on that white robe with a crown now, and so like, they up there when the streets are gold. They wouldn't want to be here.
Right. That's like, what are you talking? Right. It's like, what are we talking about right now? Like what?
But I think that those things have their place, right? Like I think hearing that in a church setting is amazing. Like it's uplifting the congregation, and now I'm joining in the uplift that everyone's feeling. But when I'm in the room by myself, I'm gonna be sitting there like, what you mean they ain't want to be here? Like what you mean? Why would they leave? Yeah. And so I think a lot of times we don't always read the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we always honor grief very well. To your point, Jaquita, I think there's a balance, right? And which is why I'm glad the Lord began showing me people in the Bible who I could look to, because to your point, Jaquita, I think we're often taught, the church doesn't do a great job about teaching us how to handle grief. I think a lot of times we're, for we look not at the things which are seen, for the things which are seen are temporary, but the things which are unseen are eternal. Or to your point, Quita, now they're in heaven. Shouldn't you be happy? Like, I'm like, yes, but I lost my mom. Yeah. I lost my child. I lost and you don't just grieve like the physical loss, you grieve everything connected to it. So you grieve if you're going through divorce, you grieve the life that you thought you were going to have with this person, or who you married, or what kids you were going to have. If you're grieving the loss of a child, like I thought about it yesterday. Y'all, I have a confession. I just put away my Christmas trees yesterday.
Sure.
Me too.
Understood.
And listen, but don't judge. And one of the things that I've done to grieve Journey, our baby in heaven, is I get her a Christmas ornament every year. And so like yesterday I put it away and I thought about, how old she would be. She would be older than Ivy is. And what kinds of things would she like? And in those moments, I think culturally too, I don't know if I can say this or not, I feel like we kind of run from grief sometimes. Like we don't honor it the way it should be honored. And so I think that to your point, Jaquita, there's those moments. If you need to heal. Take the moment and grieve. You're not going to be any less of a Christian because you grieve.
No, that's it.
Yeah.
Or because you're disappointed in God, or you're upset with him and you're wondering why he took your mom, he took your child, he took your spouse.
Yep.
Like, we're human with human emotions, and he understands all of them.
That's
because
right.
he was human too.
Yeah. And I think taking the approach that you can't afford to grieve, you will find it more costly to
100%.
hold it than it is to allow God to help you work through it.
Right.
And I think we, especially as Black women, just because there's 3 Black women on this call, so I thought to say something.
4.
Well, there's 4, including producer
Hello,
Joy,
producer Joy.
who wanted us to make sure
Yeah.
she was recognized
Yeah.
in this conversation.
Yeah.
But especially as Black women, I think that we don't always give ourselves those moments. And I think that culturally we're told that we can't afford it. But the suppressing, what's coming to mind is Anita Phillips, right? If you haven't read or listened to anything that Dr. Anita Phillips has written or produced, please hop on that train. Okay, she is healing the nations. Okay, hop on that train. I saw her at one of TD Jake's leadership conferences, and she talked about how she teaches her clients to literally like tap or like pat out their grief because it's being stored in your body. Like all of that emotional distress and trauma and all of those things that you've gone through that you haven't processed through, it gets stored in your body. Like your body is holding on to what you won't allow God to work out of you. And so that's why in our communities, especially with our men, with our women, in other communities, we are seeing cardiovascular issues grow. Like
High
I
blood
know we've
pressure.
heard high blood pressure,
Strokes,
diabetes,
Lord.
all of these
Suicide
things that are suicide ideation. Like I work on a college campus, y'all. I cannot tell you how much our babies are suffering from all communities. And when I say all communities, I'm talking international, I'm talking local, I'm talking rich, I'm talking poor, I'm talking across all spectrums. Our young people, there is a struggle there, right? And it's building up on the inside of us because we are not properly teaching each other and we are not properly supporting each other through grief. And not just grief, we're not properly supporting each other through emotions, period.
Yeah.
Because I think
Loss,
with
right?
grief,
Yeah.
with grief also comes anger.
Yeah.
Right? And we don't know how to help people process anger besides telling them to shut it down.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think that we as a community, and not when I say community, I mean all of us, I think that we have to learn to support each other as we process through things.
And go ahead.
No, you can go ahead.
Nope, you go ahead.
Okay. So there's 2 things that come to mind talking about allowing people to grieve. So I'm on this new show. It's called Matlock. And the new Matlock.
The new one with
Kathy
Bates.
Kathy Bates is amazing in it, by the way. And she is actually trying to work for this law firm because she lost her daughter to drugs. Her daughter died due to drugs. And her husband's like, you really don't have to do this. You really don't have to do this. She's trying to do like an inside job, like get them from the inside out. Because there's knowledge that she has that this company knew that these drugs were hurting people, but they didn't take them off the market. And so, long story short, she tells her husband, she says, this is my last time to parent our daughter. Let me do this. And so even though it was really hard for her to go through the process she's going through, she wanted to parent her child still, who's no longer with her. And so that's what we have to do with grief. We have to hold it. I can still parent my daughter who's in heaven here. And I do that by getting her an ornament every Christmas, or by talking about her with Isabel and Isaiah. And we have to give people that outlet to do that, because to your point, Jaquita, if we don't, it goes somewhere. The energy goes somewhere.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are walking around with unresolved grief. and it's manifesting in other areas.
Well, and I like to your point, Quita, about young people, you know, there is this perceived idea that I shouldn't have to struggle. And that the life that I'm looking for is without struggle, is without negative emotions. And so we don't do a good job, I think, of, you know, in service to protecting, and I think in more of a toxic way than anything else, the younger generation from things that maybe we have experienced. We gotta allow. I do think it's important because some things are inevitable, right? Loss is inevitable. That you don't know when, but at some point, loss is going to hit you. If you are not properly prepared for that, it does manifest itself in all these things, physically, mentally, you know, and it looks. I mean, the levels of addiction and dopamine that we have today. I mean, it's just unbelievable, right? But a big part of that is like, I don't want to feel the negative things. I don't know how to handle negative feelings because I've never needed to. Nobody's ever. It's like there's been this layer of protection against that, and we do a disservice to generations coming after us by trying to be overly protective of things that we think are going to hurt them, but then you can't prevent the things. Some things you can't prevent. And so I think it's so important that we try to help younger people sit in hard stuff. Like and don't try to help them. Don't try to do anything. Stay back, let them feel it. And that's not cruel. Like, that's love. And because if I don't teach you how to do that, if I try to help you at every turn, if I, you know, you're not going to be able to handle things when nobody's there to help you, because there are going to be moments where nobody's there, and you've got to figure out, how do I manage this feeling that I didn't ask for and didn't expect, without destroying my life. And we see a lot of young people running to things that are destroying them, even though it doesn't feel like destruction right now. It feels like protection, but it's destruction because we don't allow people to struggle.
And it's coping too. I think we have to be careful when we're going through our grief about how we cope.
100%.
So I have to take it back to the Bible.
Come on.
Because there's don't laugh at me.
Y'all thought I was saved. You ain't met.
You ain't lying.
Okay, I just want to be clear.
Quita be putting up with some stuff that I be saying. Janae would not. Go ahead.
So, as talking about grieving and coping and how we manage and handle our grief, the Lord showed me this morning. There's two women in the Bible that are diametrically opposed in how they handle grief. There's the woman at the well, and there's the woman with the issue of blood. And so
get in there, Nay.
The woman at the well, Jesus came to her. She was grieving. She was grieving and didn't know she was grieving. Jesus came to her, went the other way just to get to her because she was grieving and did not realize she was experiencing loss. She came to the well every single day to get filled, never got filled, was coping with bad relationships with men who didn't love her. She had no self-worth. And it wasn't until Jesus ministered to her actual need that she was able to no longer grieve, because that's what she was grieving. She was grieving rejection. She was grieving being treated as an outsider. She was, living with men who she wasn't married to, and was coping through her sexual relationships to fill a void that she didn't know she had. But the woman with the issue of blood knew she had a need. She had been bleeding for 12 years and had tried absolutely everything, had spent her money, had visited all the doctors, and knew of Jesus already, believed in him, and went to him. And in her touching the hem of his garment, he met other needs she had, emotional needs, insecurities that she had being an outcast. Like, he met all the needs. And so grief leaves voids, but we have to go back to our creator. We have to go back to God, because he can minister like to the void that grief left, but he can also minister to everything connected to that void as well.
That's good.
And I think that's important when we're coping, that we're coping in healthy ways and not unhealthy ways, because it's easy to cope in an unhealthy way.
I think it's easier to cope in an unhealthy way.
For sure. Because you don't have to confront it.
Yeah.
I think what makes coping so difficult is that you don't realize you're coping.
Yeah.
I think that we call coping other things. We think that if our coping, the woman at the well was making it work for her. Mm-hmm. Right? She was like, all right, I'm gonna go to the well in the middle of the day, I'm gonna do what I gotta do, and I'm gonna make it work for me. And so we put a badge of honor that, like, I can persevere. I can go through hard things. I can, be in a tough situation and still be okay. And it's like, baby, you're not okay.
Yeah.
You're not okay. And so I think it takes somebody pointing out, hey, do you know that this ain't the life you're supposed to have?
Right.
That you have built up a false structure of a life that is not your real life.
Yeah.
And it takes Jesus coming to you at a well and introducing you, because the first thing he said to her was, give me a drink. Meaning, like, I want to build a rapport, a relationship, a connection with you. And then it was, I got some living water.
Yeah.
You got to get introduced to another option so that you will leave the false identity that you've built, or the false way of living that you built up. You have to be introduced to something better.
I think this is so important. I want to, because the thing that I'm hearing really loudly from what you all have both said, Janae, and specifically your examples, is that, no matter, Jesus will meet those who are running to him or waiting for him. Right. And either way, Jesus will either run into you or you run into him, if you allow it.
That's right.
And so I think that those are great examples of, like, two people who were struggling and Jesus met them from either end. Like, one did not know that she needed it, but when it came, she didn't reject it.
And she didn't know him either.
She didn't know him.
Like,
right?
She didn't know him, but she came to know him.
She came to know him. And then, and then the other one was looking like, I need help. I got it, and ran into him. And so I think just know that if you are in a season where you may not know you're grieving, you may not be able to call it that, right? Mm-hmm. That, don't reject what comes to you to question whether or not this is the life that you want, right? Mm-hmm. Don't reject it. And then for those of you that are running and searching, you will find him. Like, Amen. He's not hiding. You might have to get through some crowds, but you'll find him. And so I think that's a great encouragement, because people are in different places, and
absolutely,
Jesus exists in all of that. And so you see how we got real churchy here? That's because y'all not here.
Listen.
I had to share it because I've been studying the woman at the well, but not. No, I'm sorry. I've been studying the woman with the issue of blood, but this morning I was reading about the woman at the well, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's grieving too.
That's real. No, that's real.
And that's how I was. I didn't know I was grieving, and I was grieving.
That's really good. Any last words? It's probably not the right phrasing. That was bad. That wasn't good.
Listen, y'all, go buy the book. Janae, tell them how they can get it.
Yeah.
In your life, it's not just about processing infant loss.
Yeah,
like, grief is present in all areas of our life, and this is a great devotional to help you to work through some of those feelings, some of those thoughts, and some of those coping mechanisms that we've been building up. So, Janae, tell the people how they can get it.
Yep.
Yes. So you can order it on Amazon. If you type in Life After Loss 30 Days, you'll come right to it. It's on Barnes & Noble, Walmart, and Apple Books. You can connect with me on Instagram at Life After Loss Devo, Devo. or online, lifeafterlossbook.org. I would love to hear from you if you purchased the book and how it's ministering to you. It is a 30-day devotional, and we go through the whole grief cycle. So miscarriage is the lens, infant loss is the lens, but it really does apply to any form of loss that you may be experiencing.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing. Thank you for being transparent and coming. And we just want to let anybody know that whoever wants to invite Janae onto their podcast, you feel free to do that. And she'll come for a very small fee. So there you go.
Yeah,
and that fee is going to go to Ruth Abigail. Ruth Abigail getting 10%.
I'm her booking agent
off the top.
No, I was just playing. So, hey y'all, let's keep unlearning together so that we can experience more freedom, and we will see y'all next week. Peace.
Bye.